The perfume from her invitation lingered on my fingertips, just as my husband walked through the front door holding the very note I'd planned to burn. His eyes weren't questioning, they were knowing. And in that moment, I realized that sometimes betrayal isn't the act itself, but the desire that precedes it. "What is this?" he asked, voice eerily calm, as he held up the cream-colored card between two fingers. The elegant script caught the light from our kitchen pendants. My boss's wife's handwriting, unmistakable, deliberate, dangerous. My throat constricted. The room seemed to shrink around me. I could hear the ticking of our living room clock, each second hammering against my consciousness. "James, I can explain." The words tumbled out, automatic and hollow. "Can you?" He tossed the invitation onto our kitchen island. It landed with a soft thud that somehow echoed through the room. "Because I'm really interested in why my wife is getting private invitations from her boss's wife to meet at a hotel." My pulse thundered in my ears. I reached for the card, evidence of a temptation I hadn't acted on but hadn't entirely rejected either. The corner was bent where he'd gripped it too tightly. The scent of her signature perfume still clung to the paper, mocking me. "I never intended." The words died in my throat as James's phone buzzed. He glanced down, his expression shifting from anger to something worse, disappointment. "That's Richard," he said flatly. My boss's name hanging between us felt like an accusation. "He's asking if we're still on for dinner this weekend. Funny timing." I closed my eyes, remembering how she'd approached my desk that afternoon, leaning close, too close, as she slipped the envelope under my keyboard. "A little invitation," she'd whispered, her breath warm against my ear. "Just between us, girls." The memory of that moment collided with the reality before me. My husband's hurt expression, the invitation exposed on our countertop, and the impossible position I now found myself in, caught between loyalty and curiosity, between my marriage and my career, between what I wanted and what I knew was right. "James," I tried again, my voice barely audible. "You have to believe me, nothing happened." "Yet," he added. The word hung in the air like a verdict. 3 months earlier, I was just another financial analyst at Meridian Investments. Nothing special about me. Married 8 years to James, living in our modest 3-bedroom we'd stretched to afford, driving the same sedan I'd had since grad school. The kind of life where weekends meant Home Depot runs and binge-watching crime dramas. My desk sat in a cluster of 4 identical workstations, close enough to hear Madison's constant sniffling allergies, and far enough from the break room to make getting coffee feel like a mini vacation. Every morning, same routine, same coffee mug, same password-protected spreadsheets. "Ellie, you've got the Johnson portfolio ready for the meeting?" That was my immediate supervisor, Marcus, always hovering with his coffee breath and wrinkled dress shirts. "Sending it now," I said, attaching the file to an email. I'd spent 3 extra hours on those projections yesterday. Not that anyone would notice. "Great, Richard wants all hands in the conference room at 11. Richard Harrington, CEO, founder, and ruler of our corporate kingdom. The man who signed our checks and inspired equal parts respect and dread." He wasn't a tyrant, exactly. More like a force of nature everyone adjusted around without question. Tall, perpetually tanned, with those startlingly blue eyes that made you feel like you'd disappointed him before you'd even spoken. The office mythology about Richard was extensive. How he'd built the company from nothing. How he'd once fired an entire department during the recession. How his wife was 20 years younger and blindingly beautiful. I'd only seen her 3 times in my 4 years at Meridian. The Christmas party, where she wore a red dress that made the male partners nervously avoid eye contact with her. A company picnic, where she'd stayed under an umbrella, sipping something that definitely wasn't the provided lemonade. And once when she'd brought him lunch unannounced, causing a flutter of activity like the queen had arrived. Her name was Vanessa. Even the way people said it sounded like gossip. The meeting that day was standard: quarterly projections, client retention strategies, the usual corporate speak that filled our days. I sat near the back, taking notes and occasionally offering analysis when called upon. "Excellent insight, Eleanor," Richard said after I'd explained a discrepancy in one client's portfolio. It was the first time he'd used my full name, and I felt a rush of validation I hated myself for needing. After the meeting, as we filed out, he touched my elbow. "Can you stay back a moment?" My heart jumped into my throat. Of course. When everyone had left, he leaned against the conference table. "Your work on the Johnson portfolio was exceptional. I'd like you to take the lead on the Westbrook acquisition." The Westbrook acquisition. The biggest deal our firm had seen in 3 years. I'm honored, but isn't Marcus handling Westbrook? Marcus is competent, but this needs someone with more attention to detail. His smile was brief but warm. Someone who can see patterns others miss. I walked back to my desk, feeling lighter than I had in months. Finally, recognition for the late nights and skipped lunches. Finally, someone sees my potential instead of just my output. That night, I couldn't wait to tell James. "That's amazing, Al," he said, but his eyes never left the basketball game. He worked construction management, loved his job, and couldn't fathom why anyone would get excited about spreadsheets. "Does it come with a raise?" "Not yet, but if I nail this, it could mean a promotion." Cri. He reached for his beer. "We could use the extra money for that kitchen remodel you've been wanting." I stared at his profile, suddenly aware of the distance that had grown between us. Not just physical, though that had dwindled too in recent months, but in our understanding of each other's worlds. When had we stopped really listening? When had good enough become our standard? The Westbrook project consumed my next few weeks. I started arriving earlier, staying later. James barely noticed, busy with his own deadline on a commercial property downtown. Then came the first encounter. I was alone in the office on a Friday evening, spreadsheets sprawled across my desk, when the elevator dinged. The click of heels against marble announced her before I saw her. Vanessa Harrington glided into the office space like she owned it, which technically, she partially did. She wore a cream-colored pantsuit that somehow looked both professional and provocative, her dark hair swept into an effortless updo. "Oh." She stopped when she saw me. "I didn't expect anyone to be here. It's Eleanor, isn't it?" My name in her mouth sounded exotic. "Ellie," I corrected automatically. "I'm just finishing some work for the Westbrook deal." "Ah, Richard mentioned you were heading that." She smiled, and something in that smile felt both complimentary and evaluating. "He speaks very highly of your capabilities." The way she paused before capabilities sent an involuntary shiver up my spine. "Thank you. I'm just doing my job." She moved closer, perching on the edge of my desk. "No one's just doing their job at 9 on a Friday night, Eleanor. You're either avoiding something or chasing something." Her perfume was subtle but distinctive, something expensive and complex that made me suddenly conscious of my day-old blouse and drugstore body spray. "The Westbrook deadline is tight," I explained, uncomfortable with how easily she'd seen through me. "And at home? Is your husband supportive of these late nights?" The question felt invasive, but her tone was gentle, almost concerned. "James understands." The lie came easily. James hadn't even asked where I was. "Does he?" Her eyebrow arched perfectly. "How fortunate for you both." She stood, smoothing her already flawless suit. "Richard's in a meeting. I'll come back later." She started to walk away, then turned. "You know, Eleanor, ambition is attractive, but it can be lonely." I watched her leave, confused by the interaction, and the way it left me feeling both flattered and warned. That night, I told James about her visit, downplaying the strange undercurrents. "Sounds like she was just being nice," he said, half asleep beside me. "Probably bored with all her rich lady hobbies." But I couldn't shake the feeling that something else entirely had happened, that I'd been assessed, measured, and somehow selected. The next week, I found a coffee on my desk when I arrived at work. Not the break room swill, but a cup from the expensive place 2 blocks over. No note, just my exact order: vanilla latte, extra shot, light foam. "Secret admirer?" Madison asked, eyeing the cup. "Probably just a mix-up," I replied, though I knew it wasn't. Later that afternoon, Richard called me into his office to review the Westbrook numbers. I was explaining a potential tax advantage when the door opened and Vanessa walked in. "Don't mind me," she said, settling into a leather chair in the corner. "I'm just waiting for Richard to finish so we can go to lunch." But she didn't look at her phone or a magazine. She watched me, intensely, curiously, as I continued my presentation. When I finished, Richard nodded approvingly. "Exceptional work as always, Eleanor. This is exactly why I selected you for this project." Thank you, sir, I said, gathering my papers. Eleanor, Vanessa called as I reached the door. Would you like to join us for lunch? I'd love to hear more about your background. I glanced at Richard, who seemed neither surprised nor concerned by the invitation. I appreciate the offer, but I have a client call scheduled. Another time then, she said with a smile that suggested she knew the call was an excuse. The coffees continued appearing, twice more that week. Then came a small box of imported chocolates with a note, fuel for late nights. I should have told her to stop. I should have mentioned it to Richard. I should have thrown the chocolates away. Instead, I ate them at my desk one by one, savoring the rich complexity, telling myself they were merely a professional courtesy. The week of the Westbrook presentation, Richard announced he'd be out of town for 2 days, leaving me to handle the final preparations. The office felt different without him, quieter, less pressured. I was working late again when the elevator dinged. Vanessa appeared, this time in a deep blue dress that caught the light as she moved. Eleanor, she said, as if running into me was a delightful surprise. I was hoping you'd be here. Just finalizing the Westbrook presentation, I said, trying to keep my voice neutral. She placed a bottle of wine and 2 glasses on my desk. You deserve a break, and a celebration for all your hard work. I stared at the bottle, clearly expensive, the label foreign and intimidating. I don't think that's appropriate. Why not? She asked, uncorking it with practiced ease. 2 professional women sharing a drink after hours. What could be inappropriate about that? The way she emphasized inappropriate made my cheeks warm. I should really finish this work. All work and no play, Eleanor. She poured the deep red liquid into both glasses. Tell me about your husband. James, isn't it? The question caught me off guard. Yes, James, he's in construction management. And he doesn't mind these late nights, the missed dinners? She handed me a glass. I took it without thinking. We have independent lives. It works for us. Does it? She sipped her wine, leaving a perfect crescent of lipstick on the glass. Independence is important, but so is feeling desired, appreciated. I took a large swallow of wine, uncomfortable with the direction of the conversation. The liquid was rich and complex on my tongue. Richard tells me things, you know, she continued, about how valuable you are, how indispensable. My pulse quickened. Was this about my job security? Was she warning me about something? I work hard, I said carefully. I'm committed to the company. Yes, I can see that. She moved closer, her perfume enveloping me. But what are you committed to beyond that? What makes you feel alive, Eleanor? The question hung between us, charged and dangerous. I should go home, I said, placing the half-finished wine on my desk. It's getting late. Of course. She smiled but didn't move away. One more thing before you go. She reached into her purse and withdrew a cream-colored envelope. A small gathering at our lake house this weekend. Very exclusive. I'd love for you to come. She placed it on my keyboard. Just you, not a company event. I stared at the envelope. Don't think, she interrupted softly. Just consider it. Sometimes we need to step outside our routines to remember who we really are. After she left, I sat motionless, staring at the envelope. I shouldn't open it. I should leave it there, or better yet, throw it away. Instead, I slipped it into my purse. At home, James was already asleep, the TV still playing in our bedroom. I changed in the bathroom, studying my reflection. Same face, same eyes, but something felt different, like I was looking at a stranger who had my features but not my certainty. The next morning, I woke before James and took the envelope into the kitchen. The invitation inside was simple but elegant. A private address on the lake, a date, a time, no mention of other guests, no indication of the purpose. Just 4 handwritten words at the bottom, no need to respond. I tucked it inside a cookbook on a high shelf, telling myself I would decide what to do with it later. The Westbrook presentation went flawlessly. Richard was pleased, the clients were impressed, and by Friday, the deal was moving forward. My colleagues congratulated me, Marcus looked slightly resentful, and Richard called me into his office. Exceptional work, Eleanor, he said, leaning back in his chair. The client specifically mentioned your thorough analysis. Thank you, sir. I've been considering your position here. I think it's time for a more substantial role. Associate Director of Special Projects, reporting directly to me. My heart raced. A promotion. A significant one, with a substantial salary increase. I'm honored. You've earned it. He smiled, and for the first time I noticed how his eyes were the exact same shade of blue as Vanessa's dress had been. We'll discuss details on Monday. Enjoy your weekend. On the drive home, my mind raced between elation about the promotion and anxiety about the invitation hiding in my cookbook. The lake house. Tomorrow. What exactly was Vanessa suggesting? And why me? I told myself I would never go. That I would destroy the invitation and forget it existed. But that night, as James and I ate takeout in silence, him scrolling through his phone, me lost in thought, I found myself wondering what it would feel like to be somewhere else. To be someone else just for an afternoon. Big plans this weekend? James asked, not looking up from his screen. Not really. Might catch up on some reading. He nodded absently. I promised to help Kyle with his deck tomorrow. Probably an all-day thing. The coincidence felt both convenient and alarming. That night, I dreamed of the lake house, a place I'd never seen, imagined as a modern glass structure with views of calm water. In the dream, I walked through empty rooms, searching for something unnamed, while a clock ticked loudly in the background. I woke at dawn. My decision was made. I would go to the lake house, but only to return the invitation in person and make it clear that whatever game Vanessa was playing, I wouldn't participate. I showered and dressed carefully, professional but not formal. I retrieved the invitation from the cookbook and placed it in my purse. As James slept, I wrote a note saying I'd gone to the office to catch up on work. The drive to the lake took 40 minutes, each mile increasing my determination to end whatever this was. The address led me to a private road and a modern house, not unlike my dream, with walls of glass reflecting the water. Vanessa's car sat in the circular drive. My hands trembled as I turned off the engine. This was a mistake. I should leave. But before I could restart the car, the front door opened, and Vanessa appeared, wearing a casual white dress that made her look younger, more approachable. "Eleanor," she called, waving. "I'm so glad you came." I took a deep breath and stepped out of the car, the invitation clutched in my hand like a shield. "I can't stay. I just came to return this and to say—" "At least come in for a moment," she interrupted, gesturing toward the house. "It's a long drive to make up for nothing." Against my better judgment, I followed her inside. The house was stunning, open and airy, with views of the lake from every window. Modern furniture, abstract art, fresh flowers on every surface. "Beautiful, isn't it?" she asked, leading me to a sunlit kitchen. "Richard bought it for our 5th anniversary, but he rarely has time to come here." "Vanessa," I began, placing the invitation on the counter between us. "I need to be clear. I'm not sure what this is, but I'm married and I work for your husband. I can't." "Oh, Eleanor," she laughed lightly. "You misunderstand. I'm not trying to seduce you." Relief flooded me, followed quickly by embarrassment. "Then why the invitation? The coffees? The wine?" She poured 2 glasses of water, sliding one toward me. "I'm lonely," she said simply, "and I recognize that same loneliness in you." I started to protest, but she continued. "I see how hard you work, how much you give to that company, to Richard. I see the intelligence behind your analysis, the creativity in your approach. And I see a woman who's slowly disappearing into her role, forgetting that she's more than just an employee." Her words cut uncomfortably close to feelings I'd buried. "Richard values you," she continued. "But as an asset, I thought you might value a friend who sees you as a person." I sipped the water, unsure how to respond. "Why not just say that? Would you have come if I had? Or would you have seen it as inappropriate, crossing the professional boundaries?" She had a point. I wouldn't have. "What did you imagine would happen here today?" I asked. She smiled. "Conversation. Maybe a walk by the lake. The chance to know each other outside the constraints of the office. Nothing more complicated than that." As she spoke, she reached for a notepad on the counter and wrote something. She slid it toward me. The note read, "Not here. The house may be monitored. Hotel Montrose, room 714, 3 p.m. My heart stopped, so there was something more. "I should go," I said, standing abruptly. This was a mistake. "Of course," she replied smoothly, tearing off the note and pressing it into my palm. "I understand completely." I drove home in a daze, the note burning in my pocket. What was she implying? Monitoring? Why the secrecy, and why involve me? At home, I found James still gone. I paced our living room, checking my watch repeatedly as 3 o'clock approached. I should throw away the note. I should call Richard. I should forget any of this happened. Instead, I found myself in my car again, driving toward the Hotel Montrose with no clear plan except to understand what was happening. The hotel was upscale but discreet. I rode the elevator to the 7th floor, my pulse pounding in my ears. Room 714. I hesitated, then knocked softly. Vanessa opened the door immediately, her expression tense. "Thank you for coming," she whispered, pulling me inside. The room was elegant but impersonal, the curtains drawn against the afternoon sun. "What's going on?" I demanded. "Why all the secrecy?" She checked the peephole, then turned to me. "I need your help, Eleanor, and I think you're the only one who can give it." "Help with what?" "Evidence," she said, pulling out a folder from her bag, "of what Richard is really doing with the company, with the Westbrook acquisition, with all of it." She opened the folder to reveal documents, financial statements, emails, contracts with highlighted sections. "It's all fake," she said. "The money, the clients, the projections. He's been running a sophisticated fraud for years, and I can prove it." I stared at the papers, recognizing some of the Westbrook figures, but altered, inflated beyond recognition. "Why are you showing me this?" "Because I need someone on the inside," she said. "Someone with access, with credibility, someone he trusts." "You want me to spy on your husband?" I felt sick. "I want you to help me expose him before innocent people lose everything," she countered. "Before you lose everything, your career will be destroyed when this collapses, Eleanor, unless you help me." I backed toward the door. "I can't do this. I won't." "Then I'll find someone who will," she said coldly. "But think carefully. When this all comes to light, and it will, people will ask what you knew and when. Your fingerprints are all over the Westbrook deal now." The implication was clear. I'd be implicated either way. "I need time to think," I managed. "Not too much time," she warned. "Here." She pressed a hotel key card into my hand. "If you decide to help, come back tomorrow. Same time. I'll have more to show you." I fled the hotel, my mind racing. Was she telling the truth? Was Richard really operating a fraud? Or was this something else entirely? A wife's revenge? A power play? Manipulation? I drove aimlessly for hours, eventually parking near a park to sort through my thoughts. If what she showed me was real, my career was already contaminated. But becoming her informant felt like a betrayal I couldn't commit. By evening, I knew I needed to go home and face James. I'd tell him everything. The promotion, Vanessa's attention, the lake house, the hotel room, the accusations. We'd figure it out together. I stopped at a drive-thru for coffee, hoping the caffeine would clear my head. As I waited in line, I noticed a small, cream-colored card on my passenger seat. Vanessa's invitation, which I thought I'd left at the lake house. I reached for it, turning it over in my hands. Had I accidentally picked it up again, or had I never left it at all? The hotel key card was still in my pocket, its plastic edge digging into my thigh, a constant reminder of the choice awaiting me tomorrow. At home, I found James in the kitchen, his expression dark. "Where have you been?" he asked without preamble. I started, ready to confess everything. Then I saw it. The invitation, identical to the one in my purse, sitting on our kitchen island. "What is this, Ellie?" he asked, his voice deadly quiet. And that's when I realized my fatal mistake. There had been 2 invitations all along. One left deliberately at the lake house for James to find when he inevitably followed me there. I'd been playing. We both had. "James, please," I started, but my voice sounded foreign even to my own ears. "This isn't what it looks like." "Really?" He held up the invitation. "Because it looks like my wife is meeting another woman at a lake house while I'm supposedly helping Kyle with his deck." "You followed me?" "I didn't have to." His laugh was hollow. "Kyle called this morning asking if we were still on for next weekend. I came home early and found your note about going to the office. Then I found this." He gestured to the invitation while looking for the takeout menu. The room seemed to tilt beneath my feet. "James, listen to me. This is complicated." "Complicated?" He leaned against the counter, arms crossed. "Explain it then. Explain why my wife is getting private invitations from her boss's wife. Explain why you lied about where you were going today." I took a deep breath and told him everything. The coffees, the late-night encounters, the promotion, the lake house, and finally the hotel room with its damning documents. As I spoke, his expression shifted from anger to confusion to concern. "Let me see this so-called evidence," he said when I finished. I didn't take it. I was too shocked. "Convenient." His tone was bitter. "So I'm supposed to believe that your boss's wife is trying to recruit you for some corporate espionage, and that's why she's been—" "What? Seducing you?" "She wasn't seducing me," I protested, though even as I said it, I wasn't entirely sure. "The private invitations? The secret meetings? The hotel room?" He shook his head. "Ellie, listen to yourself. Why would I make this up?" "I don't know." His voice rose. "Maybe because the truth is worse? Maybe because you're having some kind of— I don't even know what to call it." "Nothing happened between us," I insisted. "Maybe not physically, but something happened, Ellie. People don't lie to their spouses about where they're going unless something is happening." He wasn't wrong. Something had been happening. A pull, an intrigue, a dangerous curiosity that I'd followed despite knowing better. "I'm sorry," I whispered. "I should have told you from the beginning." "Yes, you should have." He pushed away from the counter. "I need some air." "James, wait." But he was already grabbing his keys, heading for the door. "Don't follow me. I need to think." After he left, I sat at our kitchen table staring at the invitation. What was Vanessa's game? Was the fraud real or just a pretense to what? Involve me in something illicit? Gain leverage over Richard through me? Create conflict in my marriage? I pulled out my phone and called the office number. "Meridian Investments," came the weekend receptionist's voice. "This is Eleanor Mitchell. Is Richard Harrington in today?" "No, ma'am. Mr. Harrington is out of town until Monday." "Do you know where he is?" "It's urgent." "I believe he's at a conference in Chicago, ma'am. Would you like his hotel information?" "Yes, please." She gave me the name of a hotel in downtown Chicago. I thanked her and hung up. If Richard was genuinely in Chicago, then Vanessa's accusations might have merit. Why else the secrecy, the claim that their house was monitored? But something still felt wrong. I needed more information before making any decisions. I drove to the office, using my key card to access the building. The weekend security guard nodded as I signed in. "Working weekends now, Miss Mitchell?" "Just forgot something important," I said with a forced smile. Once at my computer, I began searching through files related to the Westbrook acquisition. Nothing seemed immediately suspicious. The numbers matched what I'd analyzed. The projections were ambitious, but defensible. I was about to give up when I noticed a folder I hadn't seen before, added to the shared drive yesterday. Westbrook Final RH Corp approved. I opened it and found versions of my documents, but altered, just as Vanessa had shown me. The projected returns were doubled, the risk assessments minimized, the client's assets grossly inflated. My blood ran cold. Was Richard really falsifying data? Was I unknowingly participating in fraud? I printed the suspicious documents and was about to leave when my desk phone rang. The caller ID showed Richard's cell number. I hesitated, then answered. "Eleanor?" Richard's voice was tense. "Why are you in the office on a Saturday? How did he know I was here? Security cameras?" "I wanted to double-check some Westbrook numbers," I said carefully. "Which numbers, specifically?" His tone was measured but cold. "Just confirming my calculations before Monday's meeting." I tried to keep my voice steady. A pause. "I see. And have you spoken to my wife today?" My heart hammered against my ribs. "Yes." "Briefly." Another pause, longer this time. "I think we should talk in person, Eleanor. I'm not actually in Chicago. That's a cover story my assistant provides when I need privacy. I'm at the Montrose Hotel, room 815. Can you come now?" The Montrose. One floor above where I'd met Vanessa hours earlier. Yes, I can come." "Good. Don't tell anyone where you're going. Not even James." He hung up before I could respond. My hands shook as I gathered the printed documents. Richard was at the same hotel as Vanessa, but in a different room. Was he aware of our meeting? Were they working together or against each other? I drove to the hotel in a daze, each possibility more alarming than the last. In the lobby, I hesitated before the elevators. I should call James, tell him where I was going. But my phone showed 3 missed calls from him already, and I wasn't ready for that conversation. The elevator ascended smoothly to the 8th floor. Room 815. I knocked, my mouth dry with fear. Richard opened the door immediately, gesturing me inside. The room was identical to Vanessa's below, same layout, same furniture, but with a different view. Thank you for coming, he said, his usual commanding presence somehow muted in the hotel room setting. Please sit. I perched on the edge of a chair, the printed documents clutched in my hand. I assume Vanessa showed you some concerning financial records today, he began without preamble. I stared at him, unable to deny or confirm. It's all right, Eleanor, I know exactly what she's doing. He sat across from me, his expression grave. My wife has been unstable lately, paranoid, making accusations. Are they true? I asked bluntly. He sighed. Some of the documents she has are real, but presented without context. Others are fabricated by her to implicate me in fraud. Why would she do that? Leverage, he said simply. We're in the middle of divorce proceedings. Vanessa signed a prenuptial agreement that limits her settlement significantly unless she can prove criminal misconduct on my part. This was not what I had expected. The Westbrook numbers are aggressive but legitimate. The versions she showed you have been altered. He held out his hand. May I see what you've printed? I hesitated, then handed him the papers. He glanced at them and nodded. These are the falsified versions. Notice the file attribution. RH approved. I never saw these, let alone approved them. Vanessa has access to our home computer system. She's been planting evidence. It sounded plausible, but I wasn't convinced. Why involve me? Because you're credible, he said. Respected. If she can convince you that I'm committing fraud, you become her star witness in the divorce proceedings. Your testimony would be devastating. And the invitation? The lake house? The hotel room? All part of her plan to gain your trust, to make you feel special, selected. It's a manipulation technique she's quite skilled at. My mind raced. Vanessa had seemed so genuine in her concern, so convinced of Richard's guilt. But Richard's explanation made a frightening amount of sense. What do you want from me? I asked finally. Nothing. He returned the documents. I simply wanted to warn you. Vanessa will continue to approach you, to draw you in. Whatever she offers, friendship, confidences, career advancement, comes with a price. She's using you, Eleanor, just as she's used others before. Others? You're not the first employee she's approached. His expression darkened. The last one lost her job and her marriage before we discovered what Vanessa was doing. A chill ran through me. What should I do? That's entirely your decision. I won't tell you to stop speaking with my wife. That would be inappropriate overreach as your employer. I simply ask that you consider the source of the information she provides and her potential motives. He stood, signaling the end of our conversation. I value your work, Eleanor. Your promotion is based solely on merit, regardless of this situation. I hope you know that. As I rode the elevator down to the lobby, my mind spun with conflicting narratives. Richard's story painted Vanessa as manipulative and desperate. Vanessa's version cast Richard as fraudulent and dangerous. Both couldn't be true, but both made sense. In the parking lot, I called James, straight to voicemail. James, it's me. We need to talk. There's more happening here than I realized. Please come home. As I drove, I realized the true danger wasn't just to my career or my marriage. It was to my ability to discern truth from fiction. Both Richard and Vanessa had seemed completely convincing. Both had evidence. Both had plausible explanations. And I was caught in the middle, unsure which version to believe. When I arrived home, James's car was in the driveway. Relief flooded through me as I hurried inside. He sat at the kitchen table, his expression unreadable, a glass of whiskey in front of him. You're back, I said, dropping my purse on the counter. Where were you? No greeting, just the question, direct and demanding. The office, then the Montrose Hotel. I decided honesty was my only option now. I met with Richard. James's eyebrows rose. Your boss? On a Saturday? At a hotel? It's not what you think. I sank into the chair across from him. This whole situation is more complicated than either of us realized. I told him everything. Richard's claims about Vanessa, the conflicting stories, the altered documents, the divorce proceedings. As I spoke, his expression shifted from skepticism to concern. So either your boss is committing fraud and trying to cover it up, or his wife is fabricating evidence to frame him for a better divorce settlement, he summarized when I finished. And somehow, you're in the middle. Exactly, and you don't know which one is telling the truth. No, I admitted. They both seemed completely convincing. James took a long sip of whiskey. What does your gut tell you? I considered the question. that they're both lying about something. The full truth is probably somewhere in between. He nodded slowly. That sounds right. People who are completely honest don't usually meet in hotel rooms to share secrets. The observation stung, though it wasn't directed at me. I know how this looks, James. But nothing inappropriate happened with either of them. Maybe not physically, he said, echoing his earlier point. But they've both pulled you into something dark, Ellie. Something that could destroy your career, our marriage, everything. He wasn't wrong. Whatever game Richard and Vanessa were playing, I was now a piece on their board. What should I do? I asked, suddenly exhausted. James reached across the table and took my hand. It was the first gentle gesture between us since this began. You need to extract yourself completely, he said firmly. No more private meetings, no more secret documents. Tell them both you won't be involved. And if they don't accept that, if one of them really is committing fraud, that's not your problem to solve. His grip tightened. Your responsibility is to yourself, to your integrity, and to us. The word hung between us, a reminder of what was truly at stake. I'll talk to both of them on Monday, I decided. In the office, during business hours, with other people around. And the promotion? I hadn't considered that. If I refused to participate in whatever was happening, would Richard rescind the offer? Was the promotion itself part of the manipulation? I don't know, I admitted. Maybe I should look for another job. James nodded. Maybe we both should. Maybe we need a fresh start, somewhere new. The suggestion was unexpected, but not unwelcome. The thought of leaving Meridian, leaving this city, leaving the tangled web Richard and Vanessa had woven, it felt like breathing after being underwater. I'd like that, I said softly. He smiled, a small, tired expression. We've drifted, Ellie. Both of us. This situation, as messed up as it is, might be the wake-up call we needed. I squeezed his hand, feeling the familiar calluses on his palm. I'm sorry I didn't tell you everything from the beginning. I'm sorry I didn't notice something was wrong. He finished his whiskey. No more secrets, okay? Whatever happens with Richard and Vanessa, we face it together. Together, I agreed. That night, as we lay in bed, not touching but closer than we'd been in months, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Tomorrow, 10 a.m., Montrose Hotel, room 714. Final chance to protect yourself. Minutes later, another text arrived. Monday morning, my office, 8 a.m. sharp, critical Westbrook developments. Tell no one. I showed both messages to James. They're not giving up, he observed. No, I agreed. They're not. We didn't sleep much that night, discussing options, making plans. By morning, we had decided on a course of action. Risky, but necessary. I would meet with both of them. But not alone, and not on their terms. Monday morning arrived with a sense of inevitability. James and I drove to Meridian together, arriving at 7:45. The office was quiet, only a few early workers at their desks. Remember the plan, James said, squeezing my hand before heading to the reception area to wait. I walked to Richard's office, my steps echoing in the empty hallway. His door was closed, but light shone from beneath it. I knocked. Come in, Eleanor, he called. He sat behind his desk, immaculate as always in a charcoal suit. His smile faltered when he saw my expression. Is everything all right? No, I said, remaining in the doorway. It's not. I received texts from both you and Vanessa last night, making demands for private meetings. His expression hardened. I see. And what have you decided? That I won't be manipulated anymore. I stepped aside, revealing James waiting in the hallway. This is my husband, James. He knows everything. Richard's composure slipped for just a moment before he recovered. Mr. Mitchell, this is unexpected. I've called Vanessa, I continued. She's on her way here now. We're going to settle this, all of us together in the open. Richard stood slowly. That's not necessary, Eleanor. This is a delicate... I've also contacted the firm's compliance officer, I interrupted. She'll be joining us shortly. If there's fraud happening, it needs to be investigated properly. If there isn't, then your divorce proceedings should remain private and not involve your employees. The elevator dinged, and Vanessa appeared, elegant as always in a cream-colored suit that echoed her invitation. She froze when she saw all of us waiting. What is this? She demanded. A reckoning, I replied. What followed was 2 hours of accusations, denials, and eventually, revelations. With the compliance officer present, Both Richard and Vanessa became more cautious, more measured in their claims. The truth, as I had suspected, lay somewhere in the middle. Richard had been aggressive with projections, crossing ethical lines but not quite committing fraud. Vanessa had exaggerated evidence but hadn't fabricated it entirely. Their marriage was ending, their divorce was contentious, and they had both seen me as a pawn in their private war. By noon, I had resigned from Meridian, effective immediately. The compliance officer had opened a formal investigation. Richard looked shell-shocked. Vanessa, strangely, seemed almost relieved. As James and I walked to the elevator, she followed us. "Eleanor," she called. "Wait." I turned, wary but curious. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice softer than I'd ever heard it. "Not everything was a lie. I really did see something in you, someone who deserved more than she was getting, at work and perhaps elsewhere." I studied her face, searching for manipulation but finding what looked like genuine regret. "Take care of yourself, Vanessa," I said finally. In the car, James took my hand. "How do you feel?" "Lighter," I realized, like I've put down something heavy I didn't know I was carrying. He smiled. "So what now?" "Now?" I looked out at the city passing by. "Now we start over, together." Have you ever felt trapped between two versions of the truth, unsure which to believe? Like Eleanor, many of us face moments where our judgment is tested and our loyalties questioned. What would you have done in her position? Would you have trusted your instincts sooner? Would you have confided in your partner from the beginning? If this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe for more explorations of complex relationships and moral dilemmas. Comment below with your thoughts on Eleanor's choices. Would you have handled things differently? Remember, sometimes the most valuable thing we can protect isn't our career or our reputation, but our integrity and the relationships that truly matter. What happens when the lines between professional and personal become dangerously blurred? Subscribe to find out in our next confession.